Live.
रत्नाकरा धौतपदां हिमालय किरीटिनीं ब्रह्मराजर्षि रत्नाढ्यां वंदे भारत मातरम. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste, good evening, and a warm welcome to all our dear viewers. Disha Bharat is an 18-year-old NGO working in the field of value education, inspiring the youth of Bharat to awaken their true potential. Disha Bharat conducts personality development programs on the theme Unleash the Hidden Potential. Where do we get this inspiration from? From the Ramayana, where Hanuman's true potential was awakened by Jambavan for Hanuman to cross the mighty ocean in search of Sita. A warm welcome to all of you to the 11th day of 15-day lecture series as a part of MyBHARAT campaign 2023. Today, we present to you an interesting and thought-provoking talk on the topic My Bharat, Challenges Before the Nation. To share his wisdom on this topic, we have with us Shri Rajat Sethi sir, India's leading political commentator and public intellectual. He has over a decade of experience in shaping public discourses and setting political narratives. Rajat sir has served as the political advisor to 3 chief ministers of Indian states, Jharkhand, Assam, and Manipur, assisting the heads of states in the policy matters concerning to internal security, political economy, and development at the rank of minister of the state. Rajat sir is a regular TV commentator sharing his views on diverse subjects of politics and economy. He is also a columnist in India's leading news dailies like NDTV, Hindustan Times, and the Indian Express. Rajat Sethi sir is a public policy graduate of John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, a management graduate from MIT Sloan School of Management, and an engineer graduate of IIT Kharagpur. Rajat sir has worked as a visiting senior fellow with global leading think tanks like India Foundation, Observer Research Foundation, Stimson Center, focusing on areas of foreign policy, security strategy, and international trade. Rajat sir is currently the happy to have you yet again on our platform. A warm welcome to you, sir.
Namaskar. A very good evening to all the viewers of Disha Bharat. The series of lectures that has been conducted under the My Bharat series have been inspiring to not just the younger audience, but also to senior policymakers and academicians around the country. Some of these talks that I have been hearing for the past 10 days have been extremely inspiring. They have given us, thought-provoking ideas and illustrated where has Bharat's journey begun and what is the direction with which it is heading, the passion and the energy of all the Indians, which is fueling its future path. Therefore, it's an absolute honor and privilege to be talking today to this august audience on a topic which is very close to my heart. It is something that I think about on a regular basis. I engage with a lot of policymakers and try and understand that what is the trajectory that our country is headed onwards. What are some of the challenges or some of the headwinds which might foresee in the near future? But we collectively as a nation, what is the firm resolve that unites us, that binds us together in a mission mode as we are approaching the 100 years of our independence? Since we are going to talk about some of the challenges, so my talk might appear a little more on the pessimistic side, but let me share with all of you this anecdote that I am extremely positive on India's outlook. I strongly believe that India's future is pegged to be a global leader. However, like in journey of any nation, there are always impediments, some internal creations, some external creations, which we as aware citizens should always be cognizant of. We should always know what can derail our growth trajectory, what are the obstructions which can come our way, so that we can plan well. Whenever you are in a battle, and this is a battle for global domination, we will all be challenged. We would be challenged on merit. We would be challenged on not so direct challenges as well. but we as a nation and as the collective citizenry will have to have a firm resolve to fight those. Therefore, with that caveat, I'm going to deep dive into what are India's short-term and long-term political economy riddles and challenges. I will share a very brief presentation, which is going to first talk about where we are today, what is the challenges in the next 5 to 10 years, and how do we present ourselves in 2047, 25 years from now? What are the challenges in that long term? So long term, according to me, is 2047. So that's how I'm going to structure the next 25 minutes of this discussion. And then I will open up the floor to invite questions from the audience. So as and when you have any questions as I am delivering the discussion, please type down in the comments in Facebook. There are moderators who will be picking those questions and would be directing it to me after my 25 minutes of talking session. All right, so now I will share the screen, but I will keep coming back as and when I require to interface with you. All right, so I hope everybody can see the screen. Today's topic is going to focus around challenges, but challenges can be myriad. There can be social challenges, there can be foreign policy, security challenges, but principally what I'm going to focus on is the political economy challenges. Why I believe this is important is that for any country, being an economic powerhouse is an absolute essential condition in order to rise as a global guru or rise as a global superpower. You cannot bypass economic growth measured as crudely as a GDP growth and become a superpower. So essentially, India needs to have an obsession around economic development. Anything that derails us from the core objectives of increasing the per capita economic value, anything which sort of distracts us from this core goal is going to cost us in the near term. Therefore, it is important that we grow and rise as an economic behemoth, and then simultaneously look at addressing some of the challenges which are thrown our way. So it's of paramount importance. Well, if you today look in 2023, we all understand how India is positioned as globally. People see us as the fourth largest economy. The world has ignored India's economic promise for a very long period of time, but that is no longer true. We are seeing that China as a country is right now in a deflationary trajectory, so much so that it's a blasphemy to even talk about deflation in China. That's how bad situation is in China. And we are seeing that because of COVID, there is a strategy of various companies who had put all their eggs in the Chinese basket, want to move away from there in something that is called China Plus One. So we are seeing that India's economic rise and India's position as an economic powerhouse is being celebrated globally. People want to decouple from China and move towards India, and there is increasing clamor around the world for that. We also understand that for a very long time, our entrepreneurship was also not celebrated. We had gradually a lot of Indians rising up the corporate ladder in the West, but India as a startup nation was unfathomable. What we have achieved so far is India has become the destination for both capital and the entrepreneurial skills, so much so that we are seeing some of the best startups being created out of India. When I used to be in college at IIT, we used to lament the cause that we in India do not create our own Googles and Facebooks. But that is past now. I mean, we are actually creating some of the best product companies in India, and we are uniquely positioned as a startup nation. We all know that India's geographical influence, geo-influence, strategic influence around the world is also starting to change. Initially, both trade-wise and power-wise, Atlantic Ocean used to be where all the action was, right from the Cold War days and post the Cold War, when there was integration of the Western Bloc. We saw a lot of trade, a lot of activity, a lot of power-based discussions around the Atlantic Ocean. But everything seems to have starting to shift towards the Indian Ocean. So much so that even the US has pivoted its foreign policy very heavily around Indo-Pacific. Indian Ocean will be the center, the epicenter for all global trade, bulk of the global trade in the coming century. It would be the focus for a lot of geopolitics, strategic conversations. People would be talking about Indian Ocean as the power play of all the global global influence or domination challenges which will come from various nations. So that's where the theater of action is going to be. We also saw that how during the crisis, during COVID times, India provided leadership. When the world, and especially the global south, was grappling as to how will they have access to vaccines, India took up on the chin and ensured that they can provide leadership to the world. And not just that, it doesn't stop there. India during all of these years ensured that its cultural underpinnings remain intact. We do not falsely copy the West and leave out on our culture, on our values, on our civilizational ethos. We carried all those values with us as we are progressing to become an economic might of the world. We were trying to do all of these things together, and the world has taken notice of it. But if you see, look at how some of the motivated press is trying to position India as. It is still the New York Times and the Washington Post. There is something amiss that these editorial boards of these prominent, influence makers around the world still see India, or they want to deliberately trap India into the same old notions that it is one place where you have religious intolerance, the minorities don't have a voice. India still remains a fascist country through something called an electoral autocracy. It was a term which was created by one of the think tanks called VDEM, which essentially means that elections are happening in this country, but these are sham elections, because at the end of the day, voting is not the only parameter for democracy. Therefore, all you have is what they termed as electoral autocracy. So these terms are being pinned upon us, being forced upon us, so that India's rise, India's position, which is increasing in the world order, that can be controlled and curbed. We also saw that recently a press freedom index was created. Can anyone here explain to me that why was India on a press freedom index placed below even Taliban ruled Afghanistan? We were below some of the countries which are outright autocracies and dictatorships. So these are deliberate malicious intent around which we are bracketed in the same old way as India has been. The entire attempt is to cage it, to ensure that India doesn't grow peacefully and doesn't grow to its truest potential. And all these actors essentially are interlocked into a zero-sum game. I'm personally a hawk when it comes to international policies. I don't feel that collective rise of all countries is going to happen. There is more of a competition. There is more of a competition of the nature of zero-sum. As in, India's rise will be seen as a cost of some other countries who would be envious of India's rise. We did not see that with China's rise. China was given almost a free pass in this period of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. For 20 good years, China kept growing and growing and growing without being checked by the Western world. But perhaps the Western world doesn't want to do the same with India. And this is why we continue to see such false labels being put onto us. So understand what true potential of India is on one side and how it is getting projected on the other side. There is a vast divergence between the two. And we are going to unpack this in terms of that these are essentially some of the challenges which we will have to overcome. Well, if you were to talk about the very short-term outlook, what are some of the impending challenges? See, whenever there is an election, we are going through a national election phase. The election year has already kick-started. We will see the 24 elections. Whenever there is an election, there is a turbulence internally, which a lot of international organizations around the world would want to poke India, would want to poke and try to lay bare some of the divisions which are there in the society. This is why we are seeing what is happening in Manipur, for example. There are international hands. I can get on to it in greater detail, but that is going to take us away and distract us from this current topic. But Hindenburg report, even the BBC documentary around an old incident of 2002 being deliberately released, and we later come to know that Hawaii was trying to fund BBC to create such documentaries. So there are a lot of these international hands which would see India going through an election transition year, where India, usually any democracy, is generally vulnerable, and you would want to use that as an opportunity. We also see that cultural renaissance is happening in our country. We are increasingly becoming more and more assertive culturally. We are more assertive around our values, and we take pride in our core values. This is something which might be antagonistic to the Western order, and there would be pushback to that. This is another very important reason why it is happening. We're also seeing that, socially also, since this confidence around cultural assertion is coming to challenge what were some of the established flag bearers of India and India's story, Bollywood being one. Bollywood is getting attacked by cancel culture. I'm not in 100% agreement of this, but there is something that needs to be studied in greater detail as we go through this metamorphosis. Another important immediate short-term challenges would be centered around India's economic growth. But while we're growing on one side and becoming a $5 trillion or a $7 trillion economy by 2030, we also have to grapple with two important issues. One is that this is an inequitable growth. Certain set of people are growing and massively expanding, whereas there are large swathes of people who still don't have access to the resources to lead a comfortable life. That's the stark reality. We're also staring at something which we call as a jobless growth, as in there are not enough number of jobs. Of course, any growth is going to create jobs, but are the jobs significant enough to be able to give gainful employment to people, so that the per capita income of the large populations can actually be improved upon. Fifth, and a short-term urgency that I associate with is this competition between political parties to distribute revenues. The revenue economics is what Prime Minister alluded to. It is the freebie culture which has come about, and everybody seems to have, politically speaking, they've started to talk about short terms, like what is the best, easiest course to win power in any state. Karnataka being one, very stark example that one political party went ahead and started distributing everything for free without any accountability to the state exchequer or to the state finances, at the cost of being completely and grotesquely irresponsible of how will you run a state. A lot of states are actually bankrupt. It is very hard to rule them, to govern those states. And you see that every time they are before the RBI and the Ministry of Finance to increase their lending capacities. So we have to be cognizant. Center might be doing good, but there will be a lot of headwinds which will come into running these individual states. Last thing which I've already touched upon is these global indices. We know about even the hunger index. India is below Sri Lanka. When India gave $4 billion worth of cash to help Sri Lanka tide over their food crisis, we are still ranked below Sri Lanka and below Bangladesh. There is this fascination, even, I'm not just talking about global commentators, even certain idiosyncratic commentators here in India itself, they also take some kind of twisted pride and happiness when they start comparing India with economies like Bangladesh. 2022 was full of stories that how Bangladesh per capita is better than India. Today, you look at Bangladesh, the same economy, which did not diversify enough and put all its egg in the textile basket, is today struggling. Bangladesh is trying to beg before leniency from the IMF on certain IMF loans. That's the condition, the economic condition of Bangladesh. We were compared with Sri Lanka. We were compared with Pakistan. My point is that India is already big enough an economy that all these, lazy comparisons which come in with small countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, all of this should stop. We should take pride in what we are doing and what we are capable of doing. And our benchmark cannot be Bangladesh or Vietnam or Sri Lanka. That's where the short term is. I'll skip through these slides, but very in one line, I'll just explain so that it is not too cumbersome. Our tax revenues are steadily growing. We would ideally want to see that, 5-7 crore people only paying income taxes is still not enough. out of 140 crore population, this has to increase. We have to have more people under our coverage. Right now, our tax collection as a percentage of GDP is even below certain African countries. I mean, whereas we can clearly tell that, India is far more prosperous, then why are people not paying taxes? Therefore, technology, artificial intelligence, all of these things are going to, ensure that tax compliance improves in the near future. We are seeing private projects are picking up. Even now, after a long period of time, rural credit is also eventually on a rise. And we will see a lot of benefits of this. This is an interesting graph. A lot of companies and their books are free of debt. Right now, they don't have like massive debts that they used to have in the year 2011 and 12, when everything, we used to call it as a double balance sheet problem. Banks also had bad balance sheets, and companies also had bad balance sheets. Now India is at an absolute perfect phase where massive investments are going to come in, huge debts companies will pick up and invest in capital expenditures, huge jobs will be created in this country. We are really pegged up for massive amount of growth in the near future. Fixed capital formation is also on the rise. One thing that I still believe, growth trajectory wise, we have fallen down from a steady path of 7% down to a steady path of around 6%. I think this change in the orbit, though it was induced by COVID, we need to increase it and start dreaming again that can India go back to the 8% to 9% GDP growth? We have that potential. But this is one thing that we, our policymakers will have to very aggressively think about, that why has, we gone lower on our orbit, lower on our expectation? Is it the GDP calculation problem, or is it more fundamental problem that we need to look at? I will skip this. And I'll come to this. This slide is something which I call it's the LFPR rate, which is the labor force participation rate. What is labor force participation? It is the percentage of people in our population who wants to work. Very simple. If you see in 2011, it used to be around 55%. It is now at 40%. So this means only 40% of Indians want to work. What does the rest 60% want to do? It's a simple guess. This is where freebie problem is. If you give freebies to families, they would not have the incentives to be part of the economy. Compare this to China. China always had an LFPR, labor force participation rate of 60%, 70%. Look at Indonesia, Vietnam, all these, rising economies, they have their LFPR of 72%, 73%, whereas Indians are stuck at 40%. Whereas women labor forces is even lower. It is at 9 and 10%. So our women are not part of this labor force. Even our men are not as much part of the labor force as they ought to be if we have to compete globally. So this freebie culture has to be designed so much at a level where it doesn't disincentivize people to join the workforce. So that's a calculation which our policymakers should be doing. But what we see politicians in the race to come to power, they skip all these arithmetics as if these arithmetics don't matter. They jump in, give freebies in an irresponsible manner, not caring where our country is headed towards. Now, talking about the long term, I've talked about the short term. There are certain challenges around 2030. If that is the short term horizon, how do we grow? We grow in a way that it is equitable. We grow in a way where monopolies are not created. A common entrepreneur can get up and rise and build a big company. We create jobs in our economy. Those are the immediate challenges. But now if you pivot to an Amrit Kal or the Kartavya Kal, this 25-year period, essentially we as Indians will have to really buckle up. I mean, nothing is cast in stone. India, we can only wish and aspire to be the largest economy, but nothing is cast in stone. It is work in progress. We will have to work extremely hard in order to achieve that. It is not a foregone conclusion that India would be the biggest economy. There can be so many, outlier events which can stop us from being that. And we have to be, as aware citizens, need to be aware as to what are some of those challenges that can come to our way. Now, I'm going to come to those challenges, but I just wanted to give you a big picture. When China got its communist regime, came to power in 1949, they started thinking a 100-year plan. What would China look like in 2049? So back in 1949, they started a 100-year thinking exercise. But India was only trapped in a 5-year exercise because all our planning plans that were created had a 5-year horizon. We really never knew that we, in a wishful way, where do we want to take our nation on longer horizons? At best, what will happen? Your assumptions will be wrong. Your future predictions will be wrong. But at least the intellectual exercise has happened to sort of understand where we are headed, what our comparative advantages are, how are we going to outcompete our competition, how are we going to place our values, civilizational ethos at the same level as economic growth. All of those things, that thinking never happened. We were always in that cycle of 5 year. Then we had a lot of unstable governments and our thinking process was taken for a ride. But right now, Prime Minister Modi is actually for the first time talking about a 25-year horizon, because 25 years is essentially 2 business cycles. That's it. And in these 25 years, we have to become developed country. In these 25 years, we have to grow as an economy. And it's a very important reason why these 25 years are the most critical years for our nation. India is a young country today, but India will not be a young country forever. Our young population today will age, they will become old. Today, India's median age is around 27, 28 years. 10 years from now, it will become 30, 40 years. A country whose median age is above 43, 44 years is considered as an old country. So we will become an old country around 2045. We will have more old people. And in order to support such an old population, you need to have safety measures, safety nets, social security nets. You will have to give a lot of pensions to a lot of old people. We will all be old then. We would require a lot of state support. And if we do not grow fast enough before we grow old, then who is going to provide that surplus to create a social net? Today, Japan, for example, is an old country. A lot of European countries are now old countries, but they have become rich before they got old, which means they have enough resources today to take control of or to provide a safety net to their old people. Therefore, it is a race against time. We cannot say that demographic dividend is going to be permanent. It is not permanent. It is going to be a challenge very soon. Therefore, some of the long-term challenges are going to be around these meta subjects, which we will have to be aware of. So these are some of the headwinds, some of the challenges, some of the fault lines that are there before us as a country, which we will have to grapple with. And I'm going to take the last 5-6 minutes to basically go around all of these challenges, long-term challenges before us, and how are we going to address that? First thing is the theory of peaceful rise, something that China got. As I was mentioning, China was given a 2-decade window to grow peacefully without being challenged. The West was buying anything that China was producing. China became an export hub, a manufacturing hub, and they were able to deliver growth of 7% on an average for good 30 years. This is why China has a per capita income of around $10,000 per person. Our per capita income is $2,000. China is the only country, by the way, which grew at a 7% consistent rate over a period of 2 decades. No other country and no other democracy has consistently grown at such high growth rates over decades. So if India grows and grows at 7 to 8% every year for the next 25 years, then also our per capita income would be where China is already today. So if we at breakneck pace, if we grow economically, in 2047, our per capita income would be around $10,000 to $12,000, where China is today. And any distraction which comes in this period of 25 years is going to further drag us down. And we are getting old. Demographic dividend is fast vanishing away. These are some of the challenges we have to think about. No other country, no other democracy has been able to have a consistent growth path for so many years unimpeded. But we will have to do that somehow. Plus, China was given that window. Today, the world is very sharp and very intelligent. They have seen the Chinese example. China has become an economic powerhouse, and now China is only staring at the West. Would the West again create a behemoth like China? I have my doubts. When India becomes Atmanirbhar and is trying to focus on our own capabilities, so is the world. Self-dependencies and global autarky is the biggest theme around the world. Trump's promise was this, that he wanted to create jobs inside America. Today, Democrats are also agreeing to that concept, that we need to create jobs within manufacturing jobs, all these jobs within America. They will not rely on India and India's manufacturing ability. Then how will our jobs come from? How will our economic growth come from? Our only domestic market is not significant enough. I mean, we have just 7 crore ultimate people are paying their income taxes, nobody else is. So we are burdening middle class and hoping that this middle class would be big enough for us to sustain through. There are questions around it which we need to think about. Another thing, it is around caste assertions. Our society still remains riddled around caste challenges. We are seeing that, with the rise of Prime Minister Modi, the focus has been more around Hindutva issues and less breaking the Hindutva cause around specific caste. But below the surface, I see the pot boiling. I see that a lot of caste assertions from various communities is simmering. That simmering is there. And that whenever they get an opening, these caste assertions will again come to the fore. There are a lot of researchers that, which implies that with economic growth, caste assertions increase. It doesn't go down. So we have to be wary that Hindu society should not be divided more and more around caste lines increasingly in the future. Because all of these, as I said, are distractions. Today, what is happening is that Nitish Kumar and then Rahul Gandhi, both of these two senior politicians of our country, are doing economic census on caste lines. That has never happened. High Court stopped Nitish Kumar from doing that. But Rahul Gandhi in today's campaigns in Karnataka also, he promised the same thing. He's going to promise that around the country in 2024 elections. He would want to see economics from the lenses of caste. And that is where the problem is, because it is going to divide our country. It is going to further distract our country from a growth trajectory point of view, from that obsession of economic growth. And this is disservice to our nation. Look at the North-South divide. The Honorable Chief Minister of Telangana talks about the United States of South India. They believe that why should the economically developed South India try to finance the growth of North India? Economic lenses would be used to also see a division between North and South. Then we will see that delimitation is going to happen. You might see that Uttar Pradesh as a state which has higher population will have 200 seat representations in the new parliament in 2026, whereas Tamil Nadu will not have that much. Even this is going to drive some level of insecurities in the southern states. Tomorrow, just a few days back, I was hearing the commentary from the Pakistani Foreign Office. They said that we don't have a problem with South India. We don't have a problem with South Indian politicians. It is these North Indians we have a problem with. So how does India, look at international hawks who are trying to further fuel this narrative of North-South divide? We'll have to be very careful around that. Climate change. Climate change is one issue which we still think that it is largely a technical issue, academic issue. But we forget to analyze that, you have countries like Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Bangladesh is 22 crore people, which will be all underwater if climate change is not mitigated. Where will that population go? It is going to forcefully enter our countries one way or the other, no matter how much boundaries you create. Will we be in a position to take so much climate change refugees into our nation? Then you have various natural events happening, which is killing people because they're all induced by climate change. And climate change is going to erode a lot of economic value as time passes. So this is a very important challenge where we will have to take a thought level leadership before we become victims of this problem. I've already talked about global autarky, which means that everybody becoming self-sufficient. Second last thing which I'm going to talk about is the low income trap. I was saying that earlier that we need to grow fast enough. We as a nation cannot be slacking, cannot be wasting even a year of low growth. because we are aging as a population, and that is something which is going to be a non-stop event. We have to outpace that. We have to grow fast before we grow old. If we do not do that, we become a permanently low-income country. That is what is called a low-income trap. We have to be wary of our politicians who want to give us lollipops, give us short-term gratification at the cost of larger economic logical thinking. We as responsible citizens have to be wary of these politicians who try and trap us into these immediate gratification tricks. Another important thing is around technology. And this is where I want to, leave you with certain thought to ponder over. Technology is going to be the biggest disruptor to all our economic thinking. Why I'm saying this today is that artificial intelligence wave tsunami is coming our way. Already, there are certain reports by thinking organizations like Goldman Sachs, which say that we are going to lose 300 million jobs by 2033 to artificial intelligence. Machines are going to replace the need for humans to work. And since I am myself assisting some of my juniors from IIT Kharagpur, they are building certain technologies. They are building technologies in the legal industry. So much so that the need for lawyers is going to vanish. Look at finance. Equity analyst is a very important job. You research a company, equities are researched, reports are created. Today, you can create equity reports, research reports in a matter of seconds. It much more higher accuracy than what a human being will do. Now, these jobs, say of an equity analyst, is anywhere between 30 lakh rupees per annum to 40 lakh rupees per annum. High paying, good quality jobs. A computer can do that immediately at much, much lower cost. You don't need this. So a lot of high-end, for example, coding. Today, a no-code scenario has been achieved. The need for software engineers and coders is going to finish. The machine is going to code for you. You only have to instruct in normal human language, and it will do the coding. Where will our coders and developers go? How are we trying to grapple with the challenges that technology is going to throw at us? Today, we are at so much pressure to create jobs. Tomorrow, technology will obliterate the need for jobs. How are we prepared for that scenario? How will we create enough surplus so as to divide between the society? We're today talking about cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all of that. People, entrepreneurs who are working in such technologies don't talk about nation. They say that nation chapter is over. We don't believe in sovereign boundaries. For us, we need to ensure that global trade happens across borders, currency movement happens across border. All of this sovereign thinking is no longer there. So young people, I mean, some of the gaming colleagues that you talk to, young people like 1890s, their first friends, one is in Pakistan, gaming partner, one is in Germany, was in US. That is their first set of global friends they are creating. They don't think from a national nation state point of view. So these are some of the challenges which are going to be there before us, because technology can completely disrupt all our thinking. But we need to have that constant watch as to what is coming our way. Finally, distractions, there is no end of distractions. We will see as a nation, we saw how China's aggressive policies on India's borders, nibbling away through its salami slicing strategy, create panic among us. The trade with China is under stress. Chinese investment is not coming into our nation, and rightfully so. But these are completely outlier events. Who could have planned for it? There is a war happening. Tomorrow, if this war between Russia and Ukraine becomes a world war, where does it leave India? If India rises and it gets into a confrontation with a greater confrontation with China, what happens? We saw one state where I have been the advisor to the state of chief minister till 2022. I left the state completely peaceful, and I thought that that state is going to grow at a double-digit growth rate for the next several decades, because that is the potential of Manipur. The least that I thought that it is going to get itself entangled in an ethnic strife, all aided by foreign elements. I did not even account for it when I was the advisor. So what I'm saying is that there are all these outlier events which you cannot put into your calculus. and it can really drive the drive the nation in a direction which is not the direction which we had thought for our country. I will pause here. I've spoken enough. These are the challenges before us, and I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I just want all of us to be like a hawk around these issues which are going to come to us, and it's going to rear its head. We need to have intellectual responses to all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that thought-provoking lecture, sir. Now, what you have done is you have made us bound to sleepless nights. But at the same time, as somebody who is very concerned for the cause of our country, we're also kind of inspired to work more, to leave our country in a better place for our future generation. And there are many questions that are flowing in from the viewers on Facebook. May I take some of your time to ask those questions? So the first question is, one of the major objection of the opposition parties is the sharp rise in central government debt, which is around rupees 45,000 crores till 2014, but has risen sharply to over 1.5 lakh crores currently. Is there any merit to this claim, or do we need to worry about it?
So the opposition, which state opposition parties, do you have any answer to that?
They've just generally mentioned that it's from all parties per se towards central government.
So the accusation that enough resources haven't been given out to them.
Yes.
Well, see, it is the state finances and the central finances are divided between the two entities by something which is called the Finance Commission. Finance Commission lays out the broad rules, and those rules, a lot of states get into debates back and forth, but those rules are essentially hard-coded, and no government, be it the center or the state, can go against it. They have the protection of our constitution. So if you look at various finance commissions, this much amount of decentralization of resources has never happened. 42% of what the center gets is effectively sent back to the states. So when states do not manage their finances good enough, they tend to blame the center for their own wrong policies. I'll give you one example. And this is in public domain, not created by me. The Honorable Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Ashok Gehlot ji, was giving an interview to a press. And he said that, the press asked him a question that why in 2023 are you giving 200 units of free electricity to all people in Rajasthan? What's the merit for it when your discoms are all bankrupt in Rajasthan? You don't have the resources, your state finances are bad. Why are you doing this irresponsible fiscal act? To that, he laughed and said that in Rajasthan, for the past 50 years, discoms have been bankrupt. They will be bankrupt for 5 more years. How it is going to affect me? Can such a senior leader be so irresponsible about the economy of a state? This is where I personally feel, and it's not one party, it's all parties of all hues and colors, even the BJP. They all try to adopt certain shortcut measures when it comes to instant gratification for your voters, because that is going to fetch them power. But once they come to power, they continue to take irresponsible steps, which further harms and keeps on harming the economy to an extent that I can go on and elaborate several state governments who are almost bankrupt. They are unviable as an economic independent entity.
Yes. Sir, we have yet another question. We are discussing about Atmanirbharata. However, recent scenario of freebie poll promises is increasing. As a head of Arthashastra, the reputed economic think tank, what do you think can be done to curtail this freebie culture? Could there be any rules that would be brought about to curtail freebie culture?
So certainly, I think there has to be a commission of a lot of intellectuals who should come together, top economists who should come together and devise certain rules and regulations around which a state government or the central government can work under. They should not go beyond their means in distributing freebies. If you are able to generate enough avenues for revenue, good enough, do and distribute the way you want to. But if you do not have the required revenue streams, you will have to work within the broad ambit of certain bipartisan rules and regulations. Some entity, either monitored by the Supreme Court or some such entity, should come in, should step in, and the citizens of our country should support that that committee which looks into how to structure state finances and stop freebie culture in this country.
Thank you so much, sir. It's a very thought-promoting answer as well. There's yet another question. It is well known how countries like China took to a more authoritarian administration to get to the forefront in their economic growth. Can some change in the way our electoral government functions help India grow in a more focused manner?
See, that's a very intelligent question. We cannot even aspire to grow at the cost that China has grown. Giving up freedom of expression, very basic freedoms, and getting an economic growth at that cost is too much. I mean, we as a country will never accept, economic growth at the cost of our basic freedoms. So therefore, the challenge is even more complex for us, that as a democracy, we cannot be so enforcing in our, in our policies and in giving up so much of citizens' freedoms to the state to take care of the economic development. Ultimately, it will have to depend on the prowess of individual entrepreneurs this country has the capability of producing. We will have to chart out our own approach to economic growth. We cannot be aping China. That model is just not going to work for us. So we therefore need to have our own independent thinking. We will have to prove it. And if that model doesn't work, we'll have to think of something else. But that thinking has to constantly, in a non-stop way, carry on and on. A startup story was very good, but right now certain startups are floundering. I mean, a lot of startups are going bankrupt. That is also a challenge before us. Startup story has served us well, but is the startup story enough? Is it creating enough number of jobs? I know 4 of my batchmates are running unicorns in this country, but each unicorn also doesn't employ more than 1,000 employees. So 4,000 or 5,000 employees of these companies is not enough to swing the needle. We also need a simultaneously MSME focused approach where large swathes of jobs can be created. Our foreign secretaries and the entire establishment, which is full of IFS officers, will have to have a very hawkish approach when it comes to attracting companies out of China when they are ready to move, to bring them to India. We have our foreign offices in some of the developed countries out there. What is the exercise that they do in terms of reaching out to the corporates over there and making a good case for India? They don't do that. And I can tell you that my biggest frustration is this IFS lobby. And I have been very vocal about it. They do whining and dining in foreign countries. They might be working with very good intentions. I'm not questioning them, but their intentions will have to be measured on the economic success that they are bringing for the nation. That's all I'm saying. That is something that should be added into their KPIs in the key performance indicators, that if you are able to bring in so amount of companies into this country, you will be judged on that. So far that hasn't happened. Economic focus of any of our high commissions of foreign embassies has not been there so far. This is why you see that several organizations, MNCs who operate in India, still have to reach out to a lot of think tanks to say that how can we build a case for India? How can we convince our board of directors sitting in US to come in and invest in this country? Because information is not there. A lot of things are not there. That gap can be effectively fulfilled by these our foreign offices, embassies, and high commissions. So such things will have to be taken care of.
Thank you so much, sir. Yet another question. You rightly pointed out that caste assertions are on a rise. Do you think it is time to do away with caste-based reservations and replace them with economic status-based reservations by doing suitable legislative interventions? This is the question.
Well, it's a reform which I don't think the country is ready for as of now. There are disparities, there are economic disparities, which is largely still on caste lines. That is the fact of the matter. What I'm saying is that people trying to take political dividends by further exposing this gulf. That's where the problem is, because it results in greater confrontation, intra-caste confrontation between two castes. They're trying to fight it out. That's where the problem is. What is Nitish Kumar trying to do when he's saying that I'm going to do caste economic census? What has Nitish Kumar done? Give me one unique policy over the last 10 years where he has said that, okay, this is my policy where I'm going to increase the size of the pie. They're not focused at that. They're not focused on increasing the economic opportunities in the state of Bihar. All they are focused on, oh, the pie has been divided this way, and I'm going to further expose how it is divided. This is an evil mind working. This is not a mind which is trying to, position India as an economic powerhouse by highlighting these same fault lines that existed for all of these years. This is where the problem is. The problem isn't caste-based reservations, or it is not with certain clear, some of our communities and caste communities still lagging behind on the economic indicators. But the politics is the problem here.
Yes, sir. Sir, while talking about challenges facing India, one cannot ignore Manipur conflict today. There is a dispute between Kuki and Meitei tribes that lies at the core of Manipur conflict. There are several tribes in India which have internal conflicts, but only certain tribes seems to be escalating it to a level of demanding a separate nation status. What do you think is a reason for this, and how to address this and integrate such tribes? This is one of the questions.
Well, it's a difficult question to answer in few minutes, but I'll take an attempt. See, nation building is a perpetual exercise. It's a work in progress. Even India's nation building exercise, I first of all don't believe it started in 1947, but a Westphalian concept did start in around that time. But over the past 4,000 or 5,000 years, this nation has perpetually been in a state of nation building. We have grown our boundaries and reduced our boundaries with various waves of kings who used to rule. There have been certain tribes which have been well integrated into the mainstream, but there are certain tribes which are still, in that amorphous state wherein, half the tribe is within India's boundary, the other half is in the other country's boundaries. Therefore, they tend to believe that, okay, maybe if our, brethren of one tribe can demand a separate nation, we might be able to pull out of India. A lot of tribes in the Northeast have been able to do that because, that region is one region which is surrounded by 5 countries, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and China. So they just believe that part of the geography can be further broken down into smaller nations. And this is why that dream comes in. Assam was one where a lot of insurgency movement, separatist movements were there. Tripura was there. Then we saw about Nagaland. Predominantly, they talked about Nagalim, Greater Nagalim. Kuki also talks about Kuki land. Largely, we see that those sentiments have been curbed. A lot of these individual tribes demand for greater autonomy within India. So they also realize that it is easier said than done to be an economically viable nation. Today, what do you have to be sustainable on economics on your own? You do not have anything. And they realize this thing, and this is why they have curbed their separatist tendencies to a level that give us more autonomy, which is fine because they have their own ways, own way of life, own civilizational ethos, which they want to carry on, which is perfectly fine. And India's constitution is robust enough to provide them that window, flexible window to operate in. But you see, at times what happens is forces which are against India's peace, against India's resolve to grow, tend to poke us on especially those points where we are, trying to address our differences. They'll go and poke you right there to further deepen the wound. That is the problem. A lot of people here would know that some of the militia groups that are operating in Manipur, be it the Meitei insurgent groups or the Kuki insurgent groups, all of these groups have been aided by arms from some of our top adversaries. They carried these automatic machine guns to common citizens. Why is that happening? There are forces who believe that, if India is permanently involved in narco trade, a lot of people get addicted to drugs. That is how perhaps they will be able to control India's rise. And that has unfortunately had good results in Punjab. Punjab is one state which, right now we all know that it has been badly infested with drugs. Governments, both the state and the central government, are trying to do enough, but it is still spoiled one civilization, one generation. More states can be at risk. So it's this, we will constantly be poked upon, be attacked on some of our internal fault lines, and we have to be very, very careful. This is one such thing which is unraveling in Manipur. There are across the border entities and forces which do not want a peaceful settlement in Manipur. And this is why it has become such an entrenched, such a prolonged crisis.
Thank you so much for giving the clarity on the topic, sir. One last question. You spoke about labor force population and how we have kind of hit stagnation there. And if I'm not wrong, many generations in their 40s grew up listening to a quote called Udyogam Purusha Lakshanam in our country. But we see that more and more youth today, they want to take easy way out to life. What is your suggestion to society to bring about youth who can think for the country, work for the country, and give up their laziness?
See, market forces operate with invisible hands. They're never visibly telling the youth that enjoy your cozy life in your villages. Nobody is going to say that, right? Our economic incentives are so misplaced that they don't have the right incentive to come out of their villages and work in factories. You go to Tamil Nadu, I was visiting a lot of big factory owners in the state of Tamil Nadu, and they're finding it very hard to continuously get stream of laborers from UP and Bihar, because they believe, once you create a safety net, and if the pay is not good enough, they will not leave their villages. Now they say that we can pay, but we won't be competitive globally, because you have to compete with other economies who do not have similar safety net the way we have. So either you give up on global competition, they say that, okay, fine, we'll be uncompetitive, we'll still pay. How will you survive as a company? You cannot, you will be outwitted. This is why, state creates dead wood in the economy, and by giving out this largesse. But largesse is also important. I mean, all these freebies to an extent is important, but beyond that, it becomes counterproductive. That delicate balance has to be thought, and systems have to be created. Otherwise, you will see that if 60% of our population, and LFPR is one topic that I would want the audience to research upon. Though our think tanks, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, etc., say that it is wrong data, but the data was again wrong in 2011. Right, where we were 55% LFPR rate, today we are at 40%. So it's a secular decline. Nobody can question that. We have to address it instead of questioning the data itself. Maybe it is wrong. Maybe instead of 40%, it can be 60%. But is it that big a gap? I doubt that. It is not a 50% gap, no matter how you calculate it. So we have to create enough people to have structures, to be incentives to be part of labor force, continue to work for this country, continue to add value through our ability, and do justice to being responsible citizens. That's the only way.
Your talk today, I'm sure it has knocked some sense in viewers, and it has awakened them to work for the country. And as somebody who's in value education space, it has definitely sown that that fear in my heart that if we all don't join hands together to awaken the youth of this country, then we will have a huge hefty price to pay, and we have a long way ahead and lot of work to do by the time we reach Amrit Kal. Thank you so much for gracing our platform. Looking forward to have more sessions with you, and looking forward to see you guide youngsters of our country as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Namaskar.
Yes. Namaste, sir. My dear viewers, we have come to the end of the program as of now. I shall be sharing a PPT now. Harish sir, could you allow me to share the PPT? I'd like to share the plan for tomorrow, what and all will be there, and how you can be a part of the Disha Bharat. Thank you. Will be shared and how you can be a part of the Disha Bharat. Yes. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., we are having a program from students. There are about 30 to 40 students who have taken part in our program so far. They've been speaking about very inspiring topics about Indian freedom struggle. And tomorrow, the students will be talking about Shivapura Dvaja Satyagraha. And please do join in large numbers to do encourage our students. And tomorrow evening, we're going to have Dr. Shantishri Dulipudi Pandit Ma'am, Vice Chancellor of JNU, New Delhi. She'll be speaking on the topic Bharat, Education and Vision for 2047. We also have, as a part of MyBHARAT campaign, we also have launched a state-level essay competition, and the topic is Bharat in Amrit Kal, Role of Youth. Amrita Kaladalli Bharata, Yuva Janateya Patra. The last date for your submissions to reach our given venue is 25th August 2023. I hope many of the students will write entries, because only when you write can you think about the country, and only when you think can you take some action for the country. Please do write, and I request all the audience, elder audience watching this program, to please consider promoting this competition in your families and friend circles as well. And one of the pride projects we have taken from Disha Bharat is Swarajya Ratha. Swarajya Ratha started off from Bangalore on 1st of August and has reached Lingasur tonight. And tomorrow it is going to be starting from Lingasur and will be covering a distance and reaching Davangere. Through its journey, it has been encouraging students and instilling them in them a feeling of pride towards the country and patriotism as well. If you are somewhere in the stretch of Lingasur, between Lingasur and Davangere, please do encourage it. Please do join hands. Please do offer your prayers to Bharat Mata. She is going on her Vijaya Yatra. And that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining us all today evening. And looking forward to see you participate very actively in the rest of our MyBHARAT campaign. Just 5 more days remaining. Thank you so much. Shubhratri. Bolo Bharat Mata ki Jai. Namaste.